Okay, welcome everybody. Can you hear me all right? Thank you. First of all, I'm really honored and thrilled to be here to speak to you. It's about one of my very favorite topics. It's about threat intel. I'm going to guess that most of you know what that is or have distinct opinions about it because it really is a hot button topic. I'll be happy to take questions afterwards, and if you need to interrupt me as I'm talking, then that's okay too. I'll try and recognize it. Bear with me because I'm using this thing for the first time. So, I know. All right, so this is about getting the most out of your data. A little bit about me. I work with KPMG here in Toronto. I started about a year ago. I work in their cybersecurity group. I've done some pen testing, physical pen testing on their red team group, and I've done some threat intel work with them. One of my colleagues is Hayden Johnson. You probably know him or know of him. And we've done some work together on threat intel. And I don't know if he's here tonight, but he's been a great source of inspiration. Okay, so my background is a little unconventional. I come from poli-sci, but that actually lends itself beautifully to doing threat intel. And I have an ITIL certification, which encourages me to try to find the best way to do anything, really, to always look at improving processes and that there's a reason for the rules in place that keeps us all safe. I've done a variety of talks, as you can see there. I'm a writer and blogger, and on Twitter, I go by Encrypted. All right, so let's go through our agenda. The basics: what is threat intelligence? Sources of your data. So logging, and in this case, more is not necessarily better. New and improved. So what are you going to do with it once you've got it? Analysis. This is really important. And you'll hear me talking about these themes throughout our talk. Context, patterns, anomalies, and relevance. And finally, at the end, we'll have a little bit of fun with some loops and chains, and then a quick recap. All right, so what is your data doing for you? Welcome to Threat Intel 101. Gartner gives a nice, long version of what threat intel should be. But I'd love to hear somebody here just give me a really good real-life version for you. Any volunteers? Fallen victims? Okay.
Just looking out so you know what's coming at you.
That's it. That's beautiful. In a nutshell. Okay. Well, there are all kinds of people in your neighborhood. These are not the people that you want to meet every day. But this is also why we can't have nice things. You just have to be watching the evening news to understand why we need threat intel. Basically, that our data alone isn't going to do it for us. It's up to us to dig deeper, to find the relevance in what we're streaming in, to look for the meaning and the context, to put together history for correlation and patterns. Then we have something we can actually put to work for us. Because these guys are always going to be one step ahead, and they're always going to be looking for what we are missing. These are some key points I think really help define threat intel. If you're having a good defensive stance, you're going to know, you're going to have a sense of situational awareness. What's going on around you? In your immediate periphery, in your regional periphery, and then from a global perspective, because everything is going to come to bear on you. You don't know, you can't pinpoint where that target is. There's so much going on. That's why you have to be able to bring in from a variety of sources. So funneling it in and then refining it, because global instability is absolutely a source of worry for you. You can be on somebody's sites, and we've got shifting alliances in the region. We've got the power plays going on between Putin, North Korea. If China gets offended, we know that China has helped itself pretty much to everybody's data banks everywhere. What you don't know can definitely hurt you. No, data does not equal intelligence. You can have all of the IOCs, all of the POCs, all of the IP addresses in the world, but that's not going to do anything for you until you make it relevant to you. It has to have meaning to what your most important assets are, to what the nature of your business is. It has to be directly applicable. Otherwise, it's just somebody else's data. New threats and new approaches. The enemy's always going to be refining and upping the game. I came across domain generation algorithms a short while ago. It's a new vector of attack. I'll talk about it again a little more at the end. But this is what threat intel does for us, not just data. And no, Virginia, no one tool will do it all. There really is no silver bullet. We've heard this for a while. We have to move beyond perimeter defense thinking. Threat intel takes a big picture view. It lets us expand the focus, then narrow it down. Expand again, take in more, refine it. And here's a given. This is not an all-you-can-eat data buffet. Please, more is not better. You will thank me for that. And the joy of false positives. The more data that you get, the more false positives you're going to have to deal with. And anybody who's had to deal with that will tell you, you don't want that. All right, so here's some more good points to consider. How about finished intelligence? Think of it like data is the cloth and this is a bespoke suit, custom made for you. Yes, because your data should be something that is not just off the rack ready to wear, but made for you to wear. And there are companies that can work with you to do this based on the series of information, the specifics that you give them to tailor that data so that it's usable. And really, that's your end game here. You'll hear me say this again. Go for good, not for great. Because the prize in this is not perfection, it's actually just having a system up, running, that you can use that is going to catch threats and alert you to them. That's the purpose here. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be something that you've actually got a handle on and are getting readable intelligence from. All right, we said this before, but it's true. Relevance, opportunity, capability, intent. This is what the attacker's thinking when they're coming after you. Do you understand yourself in terms of your data? And another end goal here is helping you become proactive. We can't do a sitting down posture. We're not waiting for things to happen to us. We have to be anticipating them and using the data to meet them head on. And part of that is knowing your crown jewels. All right. So relevance, visibility. How far can you see? Can you scope from end to end? Network systems monitoring. Do you have good logs in place that you can access that really cover the whole field of what you've got going on? Because if you do, then you can see patterns. Patterns tell you what normal is, and you have to have that in place because you're going to be looking for I love this word, anomalies. One of these things is not like the others. And that's really, really important. When you find those, that's the chink in your armor. That's how the intruder has gotten into your network. That's what's going to trip them up, possibly, to let you find them. That those are your breadcrumbs. And context. Context is these layers upon layers of data that we are consistently building as we refine the data. We take the data, manipulate it, we weed out things that are irrelevant, that are false positives, that are duplicates, and we build up this fabric, this context that tells the story of who we are. That's the relevance. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the care and feeding of our data. If anybody here has had to work with a SIM, has to manage all of the logs, then you know the pain. And I've heard stories, the tales of woe of Yara rules and elk stacks. So yes, you want to make this doable. More definitely is not better. So what we're going to recommend makes sense. It's start small. Bring in feeds in addition to the data that you have in-house that you can work with as a manageable number. And honestly, your data is the most relevant data. It has the most value to you. Of course it does. It's not somebody else's. It's specific to you. That's where you want to start and glean and then build from there. So your indicators of compromise. These errors or indicators of compromise will give you a base to build on so that you understand where attackers have gotten in or where you were vulnerable. So you're going to improve that, build a better defensive posture, and go from there. Visibility. Can you see all that there is to see? We did talk about that because you want to know from your networks, in terms of your users, who's signing on and at what time, which systems should be interacting with which other systems. Are you able to see all of this detail? How far down the pipes can you go? Because that's what the attacker already knows about you. And believe me, they're maximizing on their gains. From my perspective, defense is an active, not a passive stance. And of course, yes, we all have to deal with these alerts. Now, the more feeds you've got coming in, the more alerts there are. And how do you begin to prioritize? They're all so important. But
Can you tell us how many of those are there? 9,000. I'm hard time counting.
yeah, that's the reality though, isn't it? Could you pick just one of those? I couldn't. I'd be stuck. But that's what you need to have your data doing for you. It's going to be alerting you to changes in the norm, disruptions in the system as it consistently feeds in. There will be a ripple. There will be a spike in activity as somebody's helping themselves to some extra files that they shouldn't be. There's going to be a little ripple in terms of when somebody's signed on to a system remotely that they don't actually have access for, and that normal person would never sign on at 3 in the morning from that time zone. Logs and monitoring are going to capture this for you so that when you get to it, you can go from there. That's the why. We've got lots of essential feeds, and they all generate logs. Automation. Automation is your friend. Automation is going to help you do it better, faster, and more accurately. You can do this. It's actually easier than world peace. I'm not promising, but yes, and that's how you're going to get it done. So every
great house has a very good foundation. This is yours. We start with a baseline. How well do you really know yourself? It's in how well you're going to build that baseline. You need to know the stuff you have, what it's running on, who's using it, and when they're supposed to be. So in many, many cases, when we go work with a client, we have to sit down with them and do an asset inventory, both hardware as well as software. It's crucial, and it's amazing because people don't think it's that important. The simplest question we have for them is, how can you protect what you don't know you've got? Flip that on the other side. How do you defend yourself against what you don't know isn't supposed to be there? If you know all the stuff that belongs there, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb, and something else gets added into the mix. Your asset inventory is going to work for you. Okay, that helps you also establish your known good and your known traffic. And it's part of the complete compliance process. I'll just leave this one with you because it's good. All right, so let's talk about stuff that's new and improved that we can do with our data. So yes, we know we have a shelf life. We know the attackers are moving faster than we are, and that we have to stay on par with them. We have to continuously bring in the data, refine it, and help it give us better visibility in our systems so that we can develop a more proactive defense. Now, I like coming across this very much because it helps us understand the things that we can do. We can harness the power of big data, and we can use AI and machine learning to do just that. Machine learning will help prepare for us our profile, and then it will continuously refine that because it will learn over itself. We need that power. There's so much data. We can't do it on our own. We can't keep doing it the way that we've been doing it. With that in place, we can look to link to external sources. There are excellent feeds out there. Some are tailor-made, some are broader, that will enhance and refine the scope of the data that we're already bringing in. That will be the enrichment part. We can also look at accessing who is, and DNS, and virus totals, so that we can take IP addresses and find out who's attached to that IP address. It's just extending one step further. It's almost like, it is like gamesmanship. And you get to play against an adversary that's unknown. Relate, it all relates back to you, so finding the ways to make it meaningful, building in that context and that relevance, which means you have to keep going back and digging deeper into, where am I a target? What are my assets that are most vulnerable? Where might I be exposed? What am I running on? What are the known vulnerabilities to that? You can keep asking the series of questions to build this to get better answers. Because when you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. Keep asking. Validate your threat intel against known databases. There's a selection out there to choose from, so that as you come up with indicators of compromise, etc., you can go and check. Virus total is a good case right there. You've got the feeds coming in, and there's this tremendous community to ask questions of and link from. We've been through WannaCry. We've seen that community in action. It's powerful. And finally, contextualize. That's where you apply the information that you have been building into your data, and you actually get to put it to work for you. So this is a sample. You can buy services, you can get dashboards that will help you dig deeper look at more, and then specifically tailor it in a format that's readable and usable to you. And it all comes down to, you're not going to use it if you can't use it. And what value does that have to you at all? Because threat intel is extra crunchy goodness. If you can enrich it the right way, but not just the IOCs and the POCs, but the global threat indicators and the community feeds, you're going to have a very good breakfast ahead of you. Enrich your data. So I spoke about being able to actually tailor your data earlier and customize it. If you are a larger organization, you need to be putting the investment into doing this the right way, because quite honestly, the threat actors are moving faster than you realize. This is your strategic advantage. Utilizing the machine learning and AI capabilities of some new software, and they're not just blinky boxes anymore. There's new suppliers out there who offer a really great range of resources, who give you far greater insight and scope that you can harness. Dark web monitoring. How many people here have actually had to go and do searches in the dark web? It's not for the faint of heart. It's not something that you go off on a whim, and for very, very good reason. I'll talk about each of these as we go through them now in just a moment. But it's about helping you to gain the visibility, the content, and the context for your data. These are your sources of data enrichment, so places that you can collect it from. How are you storing it? Are you using context like a comb to go through those strands of data that you're feeding in? Context really is your index of relevance here to help you sort through what matters, what to prioritize, and what you can get rid of. What I like is what this offers us in terms of predictive intel, how machine learning can refine itself to tailor-make a profile that you need it to become. It will self-learn. We've got the ability to do continuous scanning. We have sensors that are working overtime. So let's harness what's in all of that data using the power of automation and machine learning, because it's available to us. I happen to find this area one of the most exciting areas of growth, and for very good reason. So user behavior analytics lets us understand the human element in a way we never have before. It's looking at anomalies, it's diagnosing patterns, it's set up to run and observe and monitor your systems for a while, build up that pattern over time, then report back to you as this is what we see as your baseline. You may have had no idea that that was your baseline, but inside there is going to be user activity. And we all know that securing the human is the hardest thing there is. They're unpredictable. This gives us the power of science to really factor in the elements that will give us more predictability. Now, probably the most powerful illustration of this would be disgruntled ex-employees who want to leave the company and want to take a piece of it with them. Data exfiltration on a small basis is probably pretty hard to track, especially if you're not expecting to track it or you're not set up to track it. You don't know that that's going to happen. I heard on a podcast an interesting story about how when people go to a party, a surprising number will help themselves to a souvenir when they leave. That's okay, you can invite me, I won't do that. But apparently a lot of people think it's okay to go to somebody's home and take a little something as a remembrance. Now, I know that very many people, when they leave a company, will bring the thing that they created along with them. Emails, files, intellectual property. They may not even realize that that's wrong, or they may very much realize that it's wrong. Regardless, it is a significant loss to any corporation. And unless you're specifically watching for those blips, those 2 weeks before that employee leaves, there are going to be spikes. There's going to be indicators on the data movement. And that's like ants carrying crumbs away from a picnic. Only those crumbs are your data. This is your chance to actually get on top of that situation and rein it in. It's also helpful because if you do have an intruder in your networks and they're gradually sifting out the data, you can fine-tune your appliances so that you can catch it at a lower level. And we know with the issues around data privacy, new protection laws, what's going on in Britain, we're going to be held far more accountable for what is happening in terms of data loss. Now let's move into another area where we can better manage the data. Network systems monitoring has always been a challenge for ICS SCADA because the equipment there is proprietary, specialized, and in many cases, it's just much older. If you break it, it falls down hard and it doesn't come back up. But this is the stuff that gives us water, power, runs mass transportation, it's in our hospitals. It's critical infrastructure. And it's treated differently because it is different. And there's a very different mindset around how it's managed. But the bottom line is the attackers know this. That's what they're leveraging off of, is that people aren't going to be patching it or monitoring it or working with it. So not the same way that we protect the rest of our systems, right? And that's a gaping hole of vulnerability. I would use, the best case in point for me was the attack on the Ukrainian power grid. How many people are familiar with the story of the Ukrainian power grid in 2015? Okay, so it's December, just before Christmas, 2015, in the Ukraine. Everybody knows how cold the Ukraine can get, right? I mean, it's really cold. The power goes out. The Grinch almost stole Christmas for these guys. But the lead up to that was that the attackers were in those networks for 9 months, undetected, moving laterally, gathering credentials until they hit the jackpot. They got the VPN creds so that they could effectively do a jump over what was an air gap from the administrative side to the supposedly sequestered OT side that handled the power grid. Yeah, the VPN credentials were over here. But nobody thought that anybody was in the network, or nobody saw that anybody was in the network. They got them because they have persistence, and they have the luxury of time and money that we don't have. Once they got over here, they had a whole plan in place. It was very well executed. Stuff went down like dominoes. They even DOS'd the incoming call system so that people were calling to say they had no power, but the front desk couldn't receive those calls. It was way too late when they finally figured out that something was wrong. That's why we need to be able to have full visibility into the networks. We have to be continuously monitoring and have logs that are able to generate the alerts, and especially to know from our baseline what a good normal is, so that when the attackers are moving around in there, we can catch them. We can see a blip that somebody who has no business in there has been in there
and they're an unwelcome guest. Some of the stuff that got knocked over, I think they're still working on replacing it because it was bricked. All right, so dark web monitoring. It works differently down here. I've had to do a couple of assignments for work with it. I'm not an expert on it, but I have read the work of experts on how to do this because, honest to God, it scares the bejesus out of me to think of whom I'm going to be going down there with. And really, you don't know who's going to follow you home. Really. I'm not worried about the NSA. I'm more worried about Igor and Sergey and somebody else down there. So I have a specialized system that I've got set up in place that's proprietary. But I would much rather be utilizing the bigger power of the firms that have been coming up that are able to send out automated scopes and sensors across this network. The problem with the dark web is that, unlike the surface web, it's not indexed. We can call on Google. Google can tell us anything. Google can tell us what's wrong with our teeth. Google can tell us what to make for dinner. Not so with the dark web. You have to go down there and you have to use their search engines and manually search for things. It doesn't let you, I haven't had any success with Boolean search operators. It doesn't respond to those. It even tells you it doesn't respond to those. So you can work with a limited number of search engines. They don't all look at everything. So you have a patchwork, actually, of visibility into that. And that's where I see the real advantage to this new area. Being able to get a much bigger picture much faster than one or two or three people trying to do this on their own. Because the other side of doing the search in the dark web is very dangerous. You have got, and I have done this, you've got to set yourself up as an anonymous entity, and then you have got to go and get yourself entry into these markets. These markets are mostly by membership, so you have to create a false identity and then be accepted in, and then there are the forums. If you just want to buy stuff, the markets are fine. If you want information, it's in the forums. And if you go in the forums, you better make sure you have your tracks well covered or you don't piss anybody off, because they slap back really hard and really fast. That's not what I want my job to be about. But you can find this information a lot more efficiently using some automation and some powerful search techniques that an individual can do on their own. But I'm happy to say the future is now. And these are just some screenshots. I'm sorry, they're not very well rendered. I got an eye full of stuff today as well, but I didn't bring those pictures. So this is an example of just one of the types of devices that are out there that are more sophisticated, that are a universal device that can bring in all the information and help you set up to do it. But it comes with a price tag. So it really isn't for most people. But it is an option, and it's where the future is going. So let's talk about analysis. And analysis is the human component of this. I was reading something, I was going through Security Onion because I wanted to learn more about how to use that because it's a pretty cool tool. It lays right out that, bottom line, the human component is the most important piece of what you're doing. You can have all of the data feeds and the correlation, but in the end you need to rely on the strength of your human analysts. Because analysis is not automated. So your data needs to serve you. And it needs to serve you at different levels. It needs to come in a relevant format for the C-suite, as well as for the guys who are putting out the fires in the SOC. You can do this. You can tailor it, you can refine it to put out reports and information so that both parties can understand it in terms that are relevant to them.
So for the SOC to know the IPs and the malware contents, for the C-suite to have it expressed in terms of risk. Has anybody had to do governance, risk, and compliance? Okay. I can speak some French, I can speak Spanish, I can speak Italian. Oh my God, I don't speak business. That's what I discovered when I got to KPMG. Trying to put something, articulate something that is glaringly apparent to me as hazardous in terms of business risk is a real challenge. And yet, until we manage to do this, we will not win them over. And we have to win them over. We have to have the full involvement and support of the C-suites to be able to push our fight further in terms of defense and threat intel. If they understand in terms of business risk, what ransomware, what this new malware, what a DDoS attack means to them, you will have that support. And it means money to get the equipment, to purchase the manpower, to keep the people in place, to arrange for extra training. You need all these things. You want these things. We want management's buy-in, but they're not going to give that because they're profit-oriented, they're running a business, and that business pays our salaries. You have to make it relevant and applicable to them. We can do that. I think WannaCry probably hit that point home better than anything has. And it's a real opportunity for us to leverage on. They've come down a couple of steps from the C-suite because they've seen it, they understand it. But we should find a way to keep moving forward and having those parleys. And this is what we can do. This data gives us the opportunity to communicate with them. And we all then work together to solve the problem and not battle rules and regulations. So these are things that you should be the master of your own domain about. You know your own environment better than anybody else, or you should. Do you understand yourself in terms of your opportunity for harm? Have you really got a handle on how to use and access all of your logs? Operational versus strategic intelligence. Well, that's what I've been explaining. Strategic, when you give the information to the C-suite so they can actually leverage and use from a wider scale, a global perspective, versus operational, where when you're down on the ground and fighting fires and dealing with what's incoming through the machines. It's of real value to everybody to understand the phases of an attack in terms of the cyber kill chain. How many people here know what the cyber kill chain is? All right, it's accessible, it's interesting. I absolutely encourage you to read it, to learn more about it, because there's not just the cyber kill chain, there's also the extended cyber kill chain. And in addition to that, there's a little something called the OODA loop. And I'll probably talk about those more. And I'm going to pause here. I completely forgot at the beginning. I should have said a disclaimer. If I didn't do so, I will do so now. The opinions expressed here are solely those of my own and not those of my employer, past or present. And any products that I do reference here are not as an endorsement, but just as an illustration. Okay, thank you. All right, talking about tactics, techniques, procedures. That's how the attacker is understanding you. Do you understand that about yourself? When you can answer the questions about where your vulnerabilities are, because you've got your logs in place and you've got your baseline set up, and you have identified your crown jewels, you're going to be in step. You're going to be where the attacker is assessing you. You can't accurately defend yourself if you haven't identified your crown jewels. And again, a surprising number of people don't really know. They don't know what their most valuable assets are or where they are until it's too late. Now I love how you can take the baseline and look at patterns and find anomalies. Do you guys remember when you were kids, those books, the activity books, and you had to find the differences in between the pictures? That's what this is like. It's actually challenging and fun. I know, it's weird, but it's true, but that's why we're here. So, we're going to transform that knowledge that we glean when we find those anomalies, when we go, this is the exciting part too, threat hunting, because now you have moved into a proactive stance. This is active defense. This is putting your data, which is now intelligence, to work for you. You are getting an actual bang for your buck here. All of those feeds, they mean something. And it doesn't have to be a whole ton of feeds. It's the feeds that are most relevant to you. They're telling you, all of that information is telling you where you are standing now, what your status is, what doesn't belong on your radar, what time that happened, and potentially who, what, when, how, and where. You really have a handle on this, and that's going to help you prepare for that next attack, or better yet, more realistically, catch the guy that's in your network right now. And we know that the attacker's in the network. It's just a matter of playing hide and seek. I'm getting you guys ready to win that game. So it does look complex. So complex. Which is why people give up. Which is why you don't want to set it up to be that hard. You set it up to be the system you want to work on, with the feeds that you understand and are ready to handle, so that you don't bite off more than you can chew, so that you don't buy the shiny blinky box that you got talked into, that without somebody there to literally hold your hand, all of the stuff that they were telling you during the sales pitch, you've forgotten, and it's really not the same in the manual. Now, I like this illustration of patterns. I had a lot of fun exploring the SWIFT bank attacks last year, the attack against the Bank of Bangladesh. How many people are familiar with that story? It's a good story. Well, the bottom line is that attribution is a dangerous game to play. You have to have the facts in place before you point a finger. People were trying to figure out who was at the root of it, because it was a very clever heist. The attackers would have had $1 billion, but spelling wasn't their strongest suit, so they came away with just under $100 million. Nonetheless, that's $100 million from a bank. And they pulled it out without anybody noticing. They managed to reroute. The printout orders, the manual paper copies were stopped. They knew how the organization worked better than the organization knew itself. They set it up so that it would straddle a banking holiday, so that people wouldn't get warning of the reports. And there was no automated warning system in place to say that somebody was messing with the code at a basic level, where an alert actually could have been triggered in the databases had somebody been able to just take a few extra steps to do that. And that would have nipped it in the bud. It was carried out all the way through so that 2 bytes issued a null statement saying nothing is wrong here, and the fraudulent transfer orders were allowed to go through. I'd like $20 million. Now I'd like $30 million. Nobody wants that to happen to their bank. So when people were doing an analysis of this, and one of the people was Eric Sheehan, who helped do the reverse engineering on Stuxnet, they noticed some similarities in the code. And they were tracing the similarities back to an attack that happened against Sony Corporation back in 2014. How many people remember when Sony got taken down? That was major. They saw a similarity, and at that point, North Korea had been considered very strongly responsible. And a group that worked out of North Korea on the behest of the North Korean government, I will say, is the Lazarus Group. You're pretty shadowy, you're very interesting, we don't know a lot about them, but then we don't know a lot about North Korea. So all we have are patterns in these lines of code. And now the interesting story is the correlation between these patterns and what they've been seeing in the WannaCry ransomware. There's a lot of very solid speculation that the Lazarus Group has been busy. Remember, attribution is a dangerous game, so they're not there yet. But this is why patterns matter. And you find the anomalies. One of these things is not like the others. If you can understand things at this level, and you will, then you can spot what doesn't belong and pinpoint it so that you can zero in and actually find the threat that's in your system. I like this. It's a pretty good depiction of all of your incoming data sources and feeds. Right? You've got your file server logs, something feeding into a SIM, and SIMs are not known for having a great ability with historical context. Why do you want historical context? You need to have the history so that the pattern can be traced over time. This is how you put all of that information together. So finally, we'll have a little bit of fun with some loops and chains. Is everybody familiar with the pyramid of pain? Good. Okay. Well, we'll go on from that. Let's take a more strategic stance and up it. You can go to the diamond model. We've talked about kill chain, the extended kill chain, and the OODA loop. These are all excellent tools that you can apply to your data, to your network, so that when you find an anomaly, you can start playing hide and seek and actually hunt the threat that's in there. SIMS is a great source for all of this information, by the way. It's all about the pivot. Our pivot is how we can harness the power of big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. The attacker's pivot is how they will turn in terms of what we know. Last year in ransomware, it was how the infection vector went from being email phishing to actually being in the systems with the hospitals. This year, I've noticed, well, coming into this year, Carbonac. Carbonac was an advanced, persistent threat against financial institutions. $1 billion was taken from Russian institutions, no less. And these guys are very, very good at what they do. They've moved into the hospitality sector because it offers them lower hanging fruit. That was unexpected. And if you weren't expecting that, if you weren't tracking Carbonac and you're in hospitality, you're probably wondering what's happening to your point of sales terminals and why you are getting credit card breaches, and this is threat intel. I mentioned this earlier. So domain generation algorithms has surfaced as and I think it's a pretty neat attack vector where the attackers scoop up a domain name, then utilize it for their purposes. And unless you know how to look for this or even expecting this, they've got one on you. The threat is continuously evolving. Threat intel is going to help us get to that point and understand it. Static monitoring of systems won't do that for us. All right, this is just a quick recap. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so make it relevant to you, and thank you very, very much for this opportunity to speak to you.